So this is the last video in the Mechanisms of Evolution series. What we're going to talk about in this video is what's called reproductive isolation. This can happen a few different ways. The first way it can happen is referred to as pre-zygotic isolation. So this is something that can limit the individuals of a species that are reproducing with other individuals before a zygote is made. So the term zygotic refers to a zygote. A zygote is just a fertilized egg. So it's like before the individuals even have an opportunity to reproduce, they're being isolated from each other. We'll go over a couple of examples of that in a minute. But the other one is referred to as post-zygotic. In this case, it's actually after the individuals have reproduced, after they formed a zygote, right? So a fertilized egg, that individual that's created is sterile. It's something that cannot pass on its genes. We'll go over some examples of that one as well. But the idea with reproductive isolation here is that it's really not isolation in the sense that they're physically separated from the other species, although sometimes they are. What we're seeing here is that these are also factors in the environment that will isolate the individuals from a species. So we'll take a look at some examples for these in a moment. If we look at pre-zygotic, there are a couple of examples here. One would be like geographic examples. So like if you have individuals from the same species, but they're not located in the same area at the same time. So maybe individuals with like a different migration pattern. There's also behavioral differences, which we'll see as an example of, for example, something like that. Fireflies are something that they show behavioral differences. It'll actually be individuals from very closely related species, but they come out at different times of night. Because of that, they're never actually out at the same time. They don't interbreed. This could also be closely related bird species with different songs. That's actually what we're seeing in this example here. This shows the eastern and western meadowlarks. So if we're looking at the coloration on the map here, the western meadowlarks are in the green area, the eastern meadowlarks are in the blue area, and then they actually overlap in the area in the middle. The interesting thing, though, is that these birds do not interbreed because they have different mating songs. So because of that, they're actually not passing any genes back and forth inside of individuals in those two groups of the population. So what we're seeing here is this is pre-zygotic. This is isolating them from each other before they have a chance to form that zygote, before they have a chance to fertilize an egg and create an offspring. So in this case, anything that's going to prevent the species from interacting with one another early on, like early enough to create an offspring, is going to be something in the pre-zygotic stage. Once we look at post-zygotic, I think that will help clarify this a little bit more. In the post-zygotic isolation, what we're seeing here is that the individuals have already formed a zygote. So again, that zygote is the fertilized egg. What this means is their offspring are sterile. A simple example of this is a mule. So a mule is the product of a horse and a donkey. Mules are all sterile. The only way to get more mules is to breed more horses and donkeys together. You can't breed two mules to make another mule. So in this case, it's post-zygotic isolation because even though those two species that are functioning, the horse and the donkey, even though they were able to make an offspring, their offspring can't actually reproduce. So in that sense, this individual is reproductively isolated because it's reproductively sterile. Another example, and hopefully this will put the end of the debate of whether or not these things actually exist. Ligers do exist, right? In this case, it has to be the offspring of a male lion and a female tiger. The thing with ligers, though, much like we're seeing with the mules, is that they are sterile. They're not able to reproduce and make more ligers. So if you had, multiple ligers, even if they were males and females, they wouldn't be able to produce more of them for you. It still has to be the offspring of a male lion and a female tiger in order to get the liger. So again, this is the idea of post-zygotic isolation, because even though these individuals have developed, they used to be a zygote, used to be a fertilized egg, they've developed into an adult individual, they're incapable of reproducing on their own, so technically they're then reproductively isolated from the rest of the population. We'll get into a few other types of isolation. One, we're talking about speciation. We'll get into like allopatric speciation, which you probably talked about last year in environmental science. But for now, this ends what we were looking at with the different mechanisms for evolution. Make sure you take a minute to answer the questions after you're finished with this video. Thank you.